this week I am analysing another member of Yhwach's Sternritter by breaking down the character of Bazz-B, whose punk rock inspired look, hot-headed personality, and insightful backstory provides us with tons of material to analyse his character with. Bazz-B has a burning desire to prove himself to the world. He exudes pride and is not one to forget the scars of his past, which he carries around with him via this massive chip on his shoulder because he didn't live up to his own lofty expectations of himself. When he was younger, Bazz-B had believed that he was a talented genius, but reality hit him hard when Yhwach had appeared and revealed the truth behind his incredible talent. Through Bazz-B's character, we witness several tragedies unfold: the loss of friendship, the maddening pursuit of self-worth, and lastly, the desire of revenge against the man who had murdered your entire family. Bazz-B's bond with Haschwalth and his hatred towards Yhwach are pivotal in order to understand the deeper nuances of his character. So in this video, I will be analysing what had pushed Bazz-B to the edge to repeatedly challenge Haschwalth, and what had made him manifest the desire to kill Yhwach. Make sure you stick around until the end of the video, where I will be piecing together all of this information from his past to his present, revealing deeply misunderstood aspects of his character, which hopefully will make you look forward to seeing more of him in the all-new anime exclusive scenes that will appear during Core 3 and Core 4 of Bleach's 1000-Year Blood War arc anime. So without further delay, here is my breakdown and complete analysis of Sternritter H the Heat Bazz-B. Sternritter H the Heat Bazz-B, or as he is later revealed to be called Bazzard Black, is first revealed in chapter 490 of the manga and in episode 3 of the 1000-Year Blood War arc anime. Bazz-B has a very distinctive look. He is a tall, well-built member of Yhwach's army with a unique punk rock inspired hairstyle, which is shaped into an upward pointing mohawk that is dyed to a bright red color, which visually represents his intense powers as well as his hot-headed personality. His green eyes reflect a focused, determined look which highlights his fiery spirit. Bazz-B wears a long white cape with his standard Sternritter uniform that is made up of a white jacket, black belt, and white trousers. His clothing adds to his intimidating demeanor. In a cover sketch, Kubo had revealed that he does in fact wear a bolt as a earring on his right ear and a knot on the top of his left ear. Additionally, he wears a chain with a Wandenreich symbol hanging from it, as well as donning a black armband that he wears over his biceps, which has a skull and crossbones printed on it. When he was younger, he had worn a helmet with the letter B on the front of it and a red cape that was attached to his shoulders. Bazz-B's personality perfectly complements his appearance. He is just as hot-headed as he appears to be. His volatility is contrasted against his loyalty to the other Sternritter and Yhwach, especially when he attempts to attack Head Captain Yamamoto in chapter 506 despite not standing an actual chance against him. Bazz-B isn't the type to stay quiet, especially when something happens that he disagrees with, like when he expresses his anger towards Uryu being appointed as Yhwach's successor. He makes his dissatisfaction known even to the point of challenging his childhood friend Haschwalth. Throughout his many appearances within the story, Bazz-B challenges Haschwalth repeatedly. This results from events that had occurred in the past which had caused a rift between the two of them. When he was younger, Bazz-B was very proud of his abilities, so much so that he had used to referred to himself as the Great Bazz. He was judgmental towards those who were weaker than him, referring to them as losers, or boasting about how much of a genius that he is because of how quickly he had become proficient with using his Quincy powers. A younger Bazz-B did show concern for Haschwalth, who was weaker than him, and he had even helped him by offering to him a rabbit that he had hunted after seeing Haschwalth struggle to hunt and bring one back home for his abusive uncle. After this, Bazz-B had taken the young Haschwalth under his wing and had taught him out of pity and concern. I'll speak more about Bazz-B's bond with Haschwalth throughout the course of this video because it is pivotal in order to understand his character. Bazz-B has little sympathy for his peers, which is demonstrated when we see him mocking Kangdu in chapter 554 after he is encased within Hitsugaya's ice. Additionally, we see him attack 4 of his fellow Sternritter with Burning Finger 1 just so that he could fight against Ichigo. Bazz-B believes that the right to steal someone's prey lies with the person who arrives last onto the battlefield. Haschwalth. In chapter 587, we see him use Burner Finger 4 against Renji after he insults his mohawk, proving that he has a great deal of pride for his own appearance. Bazz-B is quite sarcastic as we see him tell Hitsugaya that they are a good match for each other, because his flames will effortlessly be able to melt Hitsugaya's ice. In chapter 550, he tells Hitsugaya that he is very confident with his flames, boasting about how he was able to cancel out the flames of Head Captain Yamamoto. He even taunts Hitsugaya by saying that even if he had his Bankai right now, he would only need one finger in order to fight against his ice. Bazz-B is loyal to Yhwach, but he has a deep-rooted history with the Quincy leader. He isn't the type to blindly follow him. After Yhwach had used Ashwaunen to sacrifice the remaining Sternritter who he had left behind within the Serete, Bazz-B had felt betrayed, and he had sworn to himself that he was going to survive in order to exact his revenge on Yhwach. Now, I've hinted at several aspects of Bazz-B's character here, but in order to properly understand him, we need to delve into all of the information that Kubo reveals about his past within the pages of the manga. Bazz-B's past is revealed between chapters 631 to 634. We find out that he was born as the son of a ruler, and when he was younger, it's revealed that he had first come across a younger Haschwalth who was struggling to hunt rabbits. Baz proceeds to effortlessly take out the rabbit that Haschwalth was struggling to kill. Bazz-B asks him what he is doing before stating that he stinks. Haschwalth immediately asks who he is as he refers to himself as the young Baz, asking if he wants him to name himself first. He orders him to identify who he is first. Before Haschwalth reveals his own name, he notes that he has just learned his name, as Bazz-B compliments him, stating that he is pretty sly for having made him reveal his name first to him. Now, this scene in particular hints at Bazz-B's ego, which as you can see was strongly present even when he was a child. Haschwalth asks him why is it that he is following him, as Bazz-B evaluates that a pitiful kid like him will not be able to hunt anything, so for this reason he was watching over him. Haschwalth isn't impressed by his reasoning, giving him this disappointed look. The young Haschwalth reveals to him that he isn't even able to summon a bow like him, as he refers to himself as pitiful. Baz in a friendly manner refers to him as Yugo, and reassures him, stating that this isn't true. He says that the only reason why he is able to summon a bow is because he's a genius, boasting that he is just an exception to the norm, so for this reason he shouldn't feel too bad about his own lack of skills. Baz asks about his friends, but Haschwalth, holding his arm nervously, reveals that he doesn't have any friends, and in addition to this he tells him not to refer to him as Yugo. After Bazz-B asks about what his parents call him, he reveals that he doesn't have any, and he lives with his uncle. Additionally, he doesn't want to reveal what his uncle calls him. Now, we can assume that his uncle refers to him as Yugo from how uncomfortable Haschwalth looks here, and how he is holding onto his arm, as Kubo gives us a closer look as Bazz-B notices that he appears to have bruises on his body. He nervously tells Baz that he needs to bring a rabbit home today. From the tone of the conversation and the imagery that is shown to us, we can infer that Haschwalth's uncle physically abuses him when he doesn't follow his orders. Out of kindness, Bazz-B tosses the rabbit that he had killed earlier at him, telling him to take it. He reveals that he doesn't hunt in order to kill. He does so in order to show off his skills. Baz gives him an emblem with the letter B on it, telling him that he is his minion from now on. He reassures him not to worry about grown-ups from now on, because he will teach him everything that he needs to know. Before Bazz-B rushes back home, he tells him that they will now become the ultimate Quincy's. 6 months after they had first met, the castle that Bazz-B's clan had lived within was burnt down by Yhwach. Baz refers to him as a monster who had taken over the northern territory, not with a bow but with a strange power that he was in possession of. Back then there were rumors that Yhwach had been alive for over 200 years, and he was being referred to as the creator of all of the Quincy. Regardless of this long history, Bazz-B didn't care. As a young boy, he had decided to kill the Quincy leader. Haschwalth asks if he is going with him, as Baz confirms that the forest Haschwalth lived in was burnt down too. So it's his choice if he wants to roam around in the ashes of his home with his uncle, or if he wants to seek revenge with him. Haschwalth reveals that his uncle had also died in the fire. Following this, the two of them had lived off of some gold coins that they were able to dig up from the ruins of Bazz-B's family castle. In order to kill Yhwach, they had trained tirelessly for 5 years, and both of them had decided to join Yhwach's army in order to kill him. During those 5 years, Baz and Haschwalth didn't rest at all. They laid low deep within the forest, honing their skills day and night. Bazz-B was a natural, a truly talented Quincy, but Haschwalth in those 5 years made little to no progress, despite having trained even harder than Baz. But unfortunately, it appeared as though he didn't didn't have any talent as a Quincy. Bazz had started to feel like working together with him wouldn't bring him any closer to accomplishing his goal of killing Yhwach. Haschwalth had trained harder at his sword and bow skills in order to make up for his lack of talent. Bazz-B couldn't bring himself to leave him behind, and in addition to this, he wasn't sure if Haschwalth was aware that he was showing pity on him over the course of these 5 years by having him stick around, because Bazz had known that he wasn't of much use to him. One day, the flags of Yhwach's army had returned, as his soldiers announced that they are here to recruit for a new combat unit called the Sternritter, and they are being formed in order to invade the Serete. Bazz-B brings Haschwalth and steps in front of Hubert, telling him that they want to enlist into the Sternritter. The crowd recognize Bazz as the son of their late king. Hubert ignores him, turning around to leave, as Bazz yells at him to stop, asking where he is going, repeating himself saying that he wants to enlist. Hubert tells him that testing will be held at a later date, and they will be notified, and until then it is suggested that they hone their skills in preparation. He then ends by saying that he doubts that they would accept a nobody like him. Bazz immediately springs to action, firing a bow in front of Hubert, as he says that he just needs to prove that he is strong enough, so he challenges him to a fight, saying that he will fight him for his position. Hubert calls him an insolent monkey, but Bazz confidently states that the headlines in tomorrow's papers will read "Officer killed by a monkey." They charge towards each other, but suddenly Bazz-B collapses to the ground, overwhelmed by an insane spiritual pressure, which belongs to none other than Yhwach, who has just appeared onto the battlefield. He immediately notices that everybody around him is also pinned to the ground by Yhwach's spiritual pressure, as he thinks to himself that he is a freaking monster. Yhwach says that he has come to pick up something that he has been looking for, the person who will become his right-hand man. Bazz-B's eyes gleam upon hearing this news, as he struggles to get back onto his feet, as he confidently tells himself that he is the man that Yhwach has been looking for. He will act as his right arm so that he can get close enough to him to kill him. In a very surprising turn of events, Yhwach reveals that it is Haschwalth who he has been looking for. The talentless Quincy appears to be effortlessly standing amongst a sea of people who have been overwhelmed by Yhwach's spiritual pressure. Everybody is pinned to the ground except for him. Bazz-B is actually shocked at this turn of events. In chapter 633, he tells him that he will be joining his Sternritter army as his advisor, much to everybody's shock. Haschwalth feels ecstatic that everything that he and Bazz-B had worked so hard for is finally being actualized, but when he looks towards Bazz-B, he sees him glaring at him in anger. In an internal monologue, we understand Bazz-B's perspective here, as Kubo highlights his feelings in this situation. He says to himself that the two of them were supposed to get closer to Yhwach and then kill him together. He says that he was the one with the talent, not him. Even if both of them couldn't make it together, if it had to be just one of them, then it should have been him. Out of pure envy, he glares at his childhood friend, asking why was Haschwalth selected. Haschwalth can see that Bazz-B isn't happy for him, as he even tells Yhwach to reconsider, saying that he has no talent, and that Bazz-B on the other hand is a better fit to be his right arm. Yhwach confirms that he has made the right choice, saying that he is the same as he is, explaining that Haschwalth can give his powers to others. Yhwach says that Bazz-B must have felt his power increasing daily the more time that he had spent with him. He shatters the young Bazz-B's confidence, as he says that it wasn't as a result of his own power or talent. He in fact should be thanking Haschwalth for having transformed him from being powerless to this supposed genius that he refers to himself as. Bazz is utterly crushed by this realization, as he begins to understand that Haschwalth, who he had thought to be powerless, and he had started to treat him like a burden, unlike someone who was stopping him from achieving his goals, was in fact the reason why Bazz-B was making immense progress in the first place. Haschwalth was unknowingly helping him and remaining loyal to him, while Bazz had felt like he was being held back by him. It is a very bitter pill to swallow for the young Bazz-B, who yells out in anger, summoning his bow and firing an arrow at Yhwach, yelling for him to die. Haschwalth catches the arrow, signaling that he is no longer Bazz-B's minion anymore, and he has left him to follow Yhwach. Bazz-B is powerless to do anything to stop the events from unfolding. In chapter 634, we see Bazz-B enlisted into the Sternritter, and this was 3 years after Haschwalth had joined. Haschwalth tells him to stop after he keeps challenging him to a fight in order to prove that he is better than him. He is unable to let it go, and this unfortunately continues to be the case even in the present day. Haschwalth states that he has no intention of fighting him, reminding him that infighting amongst the Sternritter is punishable by death. This is everything that is revealed about Bazz-B's backstory, which now brings us to his first appearance within the manga during the 1000-Year Blood War arc. Bazz-B makes his debut appearance within chapter 490 when he is stood with the other Sternritters, and we see them receiving orders from Yhwach, who tells them that while Ichigo is preoccupied within Mundo, the Sternritter will take the opportunity to gather at the Gate of the Sun in order to begin their invasion of the Soul Society. Upon arriving, the Sternritter appear surrounded by a pillar of blue reishi flames, which destroy the nearby Shinigami. Members of the 3rd Division surround Bazz-B's reishi pillar as he blindsides Izuru Kira by firing at him from within the pillar, which pretty much incinerates the right side of his body, including his arm. 3 seated officers release their Shikai, but Bazz-B swiftly takes them out. We see him again in chapter 506 when he, along with Nanana and Aznod, attempt to ambush Head Captain Yamamoto, only for them to be easily tossed aside by the release of his Zanpakuto Ryujin Jaka. Within chapter 511, we see that Bazz-B had survived the Head Captain's attack when we see him crushing the head of an injured Shinigami. As he watches, the Soldat launch their final attack from the first Quincy invasion. During chapter 543, Bazz-B is seen attending a meeting where Yhwach announces that Uryu Ishida will be his successor. Bazz-B, along with a few other Sternritter, react in utter disbelief. Bazz-B tells Yhwach to hold on for just a second, as he is about to step forward to object, but he is stopped by Haschwalth. Yhwach then announces that he will not stand for any objections, and that they will all understand the power that Uryu possesses in the upcoming battle. Following the meeting, Bazz-B is seen expressing his anger to the other Sternritter, as he says that he isn't going to accept it. He pushes aside a nearby aide who is offering him drinks as he rushes off to speak with Yhwach. Mask tells him to stop, reminding him that their leader will not tolerate his objections, and thankfully for his sake, he ends up being confronted again by Haschwalth, who asks where he is going. Bazz-B answers him with his own question, asking shouldn't he be going somewhere too. This is Bazz-B hinting to him that he too should be outraged at the fact that he was not appointed as Yhwach's successor. He clarifies this to him by saying that he was under the impression that he was going to be the successor. Most of the Sternritter wouldn't have had an issue if he was selected, but Bazz-B is genuinely baffled as to why Haschwalth has no issue with Uryu taking his destined spot. He tells him that there is no room to question Yhwach's decision, but Bazz-B calls him a coward for not saying anything. He then continues this trend of challenging him as he exclaims that he should just give up his seat now if he is going to relinquish everything to Uryu anyway. Bazz-B is more than happy to take his seat from him as the level-headed Haschwalth tells him to calm down, but Baz says that he is calm, a lot more than Haschwalth is right now. Suddenly they are interrupted by the appearance of Askin, who taunts Bazz-B as he questions him on what he is doing. Askin reminds him that Yhwach doesn't like conflict and that fighting is no good. He warns them that they have eyes on them, as we quickly learn that the Sternritter Pepe Wakabrada has been spying on them this entire time. After Askin's intervention, which stops the situation from escalating further, both Haschwalth and Bazz-B end up going their separate ways. We see Bazz-B again in chapter 547 when he, along with the other members of the Wandenreich, begin their second and final invasion of the Soul Society. Bazz-B is confronted by a group of Shinigami who try to stop him from taking another step forward, but he quickly gets rid of them by engulfing them in his flames. He questions if they are stupid as he explains that the invasion has already started and the Serite has already disappeared. The situation has gone past the point of trying to keep the Sternritter out. He then notices that the group of Shinigami that he had attacked moments ago have been protected by a wall of ice, as Hitsugaya and Rangiku appear in front of him to challenge him. Bazz-B confidently accepts the challenge, saying that he remembers him as the ice captain who had ended up losing his Bankai to Kangdu. After formally introducing themselves to each other, Bazz-B exclaims that it appears as though they are a really good match for each other, with his fire going up against Hitsugaya's ice. The Sternritter comments on how thin Hitsugaya's ice is, as he taunts him that no matter how much he spreads his ice, he will simply raise the humidity and melt it with his flames. Rangiku and Hitsugaya work together to build a thicker wall of ice, which he struggles to melt, as Rangiku explains that it is a multi-layered wall of vacuum ice. This angers Bazz-B as he sends a wave of flames towards Hitsugaya, but he blocks it with the vacuum ice wall. Hitsugaya finally retaliates and fires a blast of ice that directly hits the Sternritter. In chapter 549, it appears as though Bazz-B has been beaten, but he surprises the Shinigami when he asks if they are going to just leave him hanging while they are still only just warming up, stating that they haven't even started fighting yet. Bazz goes on to explain that during the first Quincy invasion, he was among the Sternritter who had survived being attacked by the Shikai flames of Head Captain Yamamoto. He was directly hit by it too, meaning that he was able to cancel out the Head Captain's flames with his own. He states that it's too bad that he doesn't have Bankai right now, because he would have proven that he only needs one finger to fight against his ice. He easily blocks a wave of ice, revealing that all he needs is a finger to defeat him, as he goes on to use Burner Finger 1, which deals a devastating blow through the captain's chest. Hitsugaya retreats with Bazz-B chasing him down, as he taunts him by saying that a captain shouldn't be running away. After Bazz-B melts another wall of ice that fails to reach him, he then finds himself in the center of a trap. He is surrounded by a mist of ice that he melts with his burning stomp, but Hitsugaya activates his trap called 6-Point Ice Formation, as the Sternritter is encased within a tall block of ice. However, Bazz-B effortlessly breaks free, and you can see the maniacal look on Bazz-B's face here, as he knows that his opponent is utterly outmatched. He then activates Burner Finger 2, which directly hits the captain, bringing him down to his knees. Bazz-B is stopped from delivering the final blow by Kangdu, who reminds him that Yhwach had ordered the Sternritter to kill the Shinigami with their own Bankai. Bazz is annoyed that his kill is being taken away from him, but there is nothing that he can do if this was Yhwach's order. In chapter 554, Bazz-B watches as Kangdu is defeated by Hitsugaya, as he calls it a joke. He was going to handle the situation only for Kangdu to appear and just end up losing. We see Bazz-B again when he reacts to Gremmy summoning a meteor that is hurtling towards the Serite, as he exclaims, "What on earth has Gremmy done?" In chapter 581, Bazz-B is seen to be eavesdropping on Shinji speaking with Omaida, telling him that the Shinigami cannot afford to lose Kinpachi. Bazz thanks them for the level-headed analysis of the situation, but he refuses to let either of them pass him, as he activates Burner Finger 3, telling them that they will be killed instantly after they are swallowed by his lava, revealing that they will die an easier death than Kinpachi. Bazz-B suddenly appears with his holy form activated while the Bambis are attacking Ichigo. He fires multiple shots of Burner Finger 1, which pierce Candice, Giselle, Lil Toto, and Meninas, as he tells them to play dead for a while. He doesn't want to hear their complaints, as he has arrived late in order to steal the glory for being the one responsible for defeating Ichigo. He is then joined by Nanana, Robert, and Pepe, along with the Bambis, who have recovered very quickly following his attack. It seems as though these Sternritter are going to gang up on Ichigo, with the one who kills him taking the glory all for themselves. In chapter 585, when Ichigo leaves to stop Yhwach, he is ambushed by Meninas, Nanana, Robert, and lastly Bazz-B, who fires a Burner Finger 1 towards him. But Renji appears and deflects the attack with his Zanbakudo, as we then see Ichigo push forward as Bazz-B and Nanana chase after him, but they are quickly stopped by the arrival of several more Shinigami. After he counts that 6 Shinigami have appeared, Bazz-B states that there are not enough of them to fight the Quincy one-on-one. Robert confirms that there are no special war powers amongst them, which further disappoints him, as he summons a spirit weapon to get rid of them all at once. Before he can fire, he is about to be ambushed by Ikkaku, but he evades the attack, and when Bazz-B tries to attack him in retaliation, his weapon and arm end up being frozen by Rukia. The Shinigami refuse to let the Quincy go after Ichigo. Lil Toto, not wanting to let Ichigo get away, tells Bazz and the others to activate their holy forms in order to quickly defeat their opponents as the two groups charge towards each other. In chapter 587, Bazz finds Rukia and Renji, who are confused as to why Uryu would have betrayed them. He begins to taunt them by reminding them that he was once their friend, before asking if it frustrates them to have a friend become an enemy. Bazz reveals that the Sternritter are annoyed with him too, as he offers to team up with them to kill him, but Renji attacks him, declining the offer. He ridicules his mohawk, calling him a chicken head. Bazz is disappointed, as he had assumed that Renji would have had some taste because of his cool eyebrows, but he was wrong. He decides to use Burner Finger 4, which swallows the surroundings up in flames and causes a massive explosion. I really love this moment because I do think that these two would have made good friends if they weren't on opposing sides of the battlefield. Bazz-B respected his style, and Renji also realizes that he may have been too harsh after he ends up being complimented. It's a really funny moment, and it ends in typical Kubo style with absolute disaster. Unfortunately, we don't see Bazz-B again until chapter 603, when the Light of Ash Haschwalth rains down over him as he questions what their worth is to Yhwach, who appears to have sacrificed his remaining soldiers who had stayed behind in the Serite in order to collect their power. We see Renji question him what is going on as Baz yells out in pain, yelling out that he is wondering the same thing. He shouts if this is Yhwach's doing, stating that he is not going to die here. In chapter 616, following the death of the Soul King, the worlds begin to collapse. Bazz-B is seen to ask himself if the Soul Society, the world of the living, and Hueco Mundo will all disappear now. Later, he along with Nanana, Lil Toto, and Giselle appear before the Shinigami who are trying to travel to the Soul King's palace. Nanana attempts to paralyze the Shinigami with his shrift, the Underbelly, but surprisingly, Bazz-B fires Burner Finger 1 through his chest. This shocks the Shinigami, but this is a significant turning point for Bazz-B's character as he offers a hand to help out the Shinigami. He states that the Vandenreich exist within the shadows of the Serite, as he says that if the royal palace falls and the Serite is destroyed, then it will be problematic for them too. He doesn't expect the Shinigami to believe him, but he pleads his case that he just wants their help to reach the royal palace, and in exchange, he along with Giselle and Lil Toto will fight on their side. His reasoning is that they want to kill Yhwach for having abandoned them. In chapter 624, Bazz-B along with Lil Toto and Giselle are given orbs to charge with their reishi, and it's similar to the orbs that Ichigo and his friends had charged back when they were first infiltrating the Serite during the Soul Society arc. Aizen even comments on how the Shinigami and Quincy are working together for a common goal of protecting the Soul Society. He seems surprised as he states that it sounds unbelievable when you put it into words. Unfortunately, this is the portion of the Bleach manga where the pacing is greatly affected as we begin to really rush through the events which really needed a lot of padding and time to properly be fleshed out. The remaining Sternritter who survived Haschwalth, Bazz-B, Giselle, and Lil Toto make their way towards Silburn upon arriving within the royal palace. In chapter 630, he confronts Haschwalth after eliminating a foot soldier who Haschwalth had ordered to follow Uryu. Baz asks if Uryu really bothers him that much, with Haschwalth in return questioning what on earth he thinks that he is doing. Bazz-B instead suggests that he questions how is it that he is still alive, referring to Yhwach's Haschwalth. The Sternritter grabs Haschwalth's collar while attempting to fire Burner Finger 1 at point blank range. Haschwalth counters him by holding his wrist and jumping into the air, obstructing his view with his cape. Simultaneously, he strikes the side of his head with the hilt of his sword. Bazz-B burns through his cape while holding onto his sword with his other hand in order to keep him at close range as he fires Burner Finger 1 directly at Haschwalth. The attack grazes across Haschwalth's face and it fires through the outer walls of the castle. The Sternritter Grandmaster regains his footing as he comments on Bazz-B's wounds, realizing that they were not dealt by the Shinigami, but instead by Yhwach's Haschwalth, saying that it seems as though he wasn't chosen by their master. Bazz-B says that it wasn't just him, but everyone who had stayed behind within the Serite ended up being affected by Haschwalth. Bazz-B goes on to describe how the Sternritter who were hit by the light of Haschwalth ended up losing their lives, and those who had managed to hide and avoid the light ended up losing their holy forms. Haschwalth coldly tells him that he has his sympathies, but Bazz-B challenges him by saying that he knew that this was going to happen. Haschwalth responds by saying that if he had told him that he didn't know, then would he believe him? Bazz-B, with visible pain in his eyes, states that he would have believed him, especially after everything that they have gone through together. Why wouldn't he have believed his childhood friend? He calls him Yugo just as he did when they were kids, as Haschwalth refers to him as Bazz-B, but the purple-haired Sternritter tells him to call him Baz just like he had used to. Bazz-B is evidently emotional in comparison to the well-composed Haschwalth, who appears to be methodically analyzing his opponent with a notable sense of personal detachment, which is emphasized by his blank expression and with how he refers to Baz. The Sternritter then resorts to using Burner Finger 2 as Haschwalth realizes that a simple conversation isn't going to be enough to calm down his childhood friend here. Bazz-B notes how it's about to be nightfall soon, and this is when Yhwach sleeps and his powers are transferred over to Haschwalth. Baz intends on killing Haschwalth along with Yhwach's powers, as he refers to him as a traitor. This is in reference to the time that they had spent together during their younger years. It is during this confrontation between the two of them where we learn details about their past, which I'd spoken about at the start of the video. At the beginning of chapter 631, we see Bazz-B rush towards Haschwalth with Burner Finger 2, but Haschwalth jumps over him and draws his blade ready to strike him down from above, but he also draws a spirit weapon and aims it upwards towards Haschwalth. During During this moment, we see a flashback of when the two had first met. After this, we cut to Haschwalth appearing to have deflected his attack into the wall as Bazz-B asks when did the castle's name change from Silburn to Warwelt. Bazz-B mimics him, assuming that he would say to him, "Why should I tell you?" Haschwalth instead tells him to go outside because the castle will be damaged if they continue to fight here. This angers Bazz-B, who begins to activate Burnerfinger 3. Now, Kubo decides to place here another flashback of a very pivotal point from Bazz-B's past, revealing what had happened after Yhwach had invaded his home and burnt it down, killing all of his family. In a similar fashion that echoes the flashback, Haschwalth uses Burnerfinger 3 that mostly covers the surrounding area into lava. As he begins to burn down the castle of Yhwach, Kubo masterfully blends the flashback with the present events when a younger Bazz-B, angered by Yhwach and feeling betrayed by his friend Haschwalth, ends up firing an arrow towards the leader of the Quincy. In the past, we see Haschwalth intercept the arrow, and strikingly drawing a parallel to this moment in the present day, Kubo has Haschwalth in a very similar pose, appearing to have just caught an arrow from Bazz-B. Following this, he strikes Bazz-B across the chest with his sword, dealing the first critical blow of the bout. Baz is sent rolling across the floor as he struggles to get back onto his feet. Haschwalth tells him to stop now because the two of them fighting doesn't benefit Yhwach. Baz spits out blood as he lifts himself up onto his knees. As the blood is seen pouring from his chest, he reveals that he doesn't care about what benefits Yhwach because he has come to kill him. Suddenly, he activates Burnerfinger 4, which manifests a sword made up of flames that extends out from his arm. He rushes towards Haschwalth, who tells him to stop and then addresses him by his full name, Bazzard Black, before Bazz-B cuts through a pillar, taunting him to fight. Bazz-B asks if he is running away because he is that scared of losing to him. He yells out "Hugo" as we cut to another flashback, and this is to the time when Bazz-B had first enlisted into the Sternritter and Haschwalth was already a captain at the time. This flashback highlights how even in the past Haschwalth had ignored all of Bazz-B's provocations via his constant attempts at stirring a fight between them. We know that this had occurred countless times in the past, but now things are very different. Haschwalth isn't going to hold back because he is now fighting for the sake of his majesty, who Bazz-B has threatened to kill. Baz continues to charge towards him, but suddenly Haschwalth draws his blade and instantly cuts off his arm. Immediately, in retaliation to Haschwalth, who is about to strike him again, Baz activates Burning Full Fingers, which unleashes a devastating attack, but the Sternritter Grandmaster evades it before effortlessly cutting him down. In serious critical condition, Baz falls but grabs onto his childhood friend's collar. He admits to Hugo that he has won, stating that things don't always turn out the way that you'd wanted them to. Haschwalth listens silently as Baz emotionally states that he had thought losing to him would sting a lot more. He collapses, and in his final moments, he thinks back to when they had first met, recalling how he had told Hugo that he would be his underling, and later when they had vowed to each other that they would get stronger and become the ultimate Quincy. Unfortunately, this is the last time that we see Bazz-B in the manga, as he collapses with Haschwalth silently walking away from him. Bazz-B is a character that is marked by the air of tragedy that seems to follow so many other characters in the story of Bleach. He started out his life as an incredibly talented child of Quincy nobility. He was hailed as a prodigy by many, and through his early interactions with Haschwalth had only cemented that idea, until one day Yhwach had arrived and taken everything away from him. He took away his home, his family, and not to mention the comfort that had sheltered him all of his life. Out of all of the things that Yhwach had taken from Bazz-B, I believe that his sense of self-worth that was robbed from him was the aspect that had made Bazz-B suffer the most. Within that moment, Yhwach revealed that the only reason he was worth anything wasn't because of something that he had intrinsically possessed, but rather he was a byproduct of him being around Haschwalth. I believe that something died within Bazz-B that day, and as a result, he would spend the remainder of his years trying to get it back. You could assume that this is the reason why he was repeatedly challenging Haschwalth, desperately trying to prove that he is better than him. What was it that Bazz-B had lost that day which had affected his sense of self-worth? Was it his family that was consumed by flames, the very flames that he now has control over? Or was it the friend who he had kept around out of pity? Or could it have been something much deeper than all of this? For a person who grew up believing himself to be a one-of-a-kind genius, having this essentially ripped away from him had left a gaping void within his ego that nothing could fill. If Bazz-B's despair was created by losing everything to Haschwalth, then defeating him would prove to himself that he was truly a genius without measure, and that his entire existence and talent as a Quincy wasn't just a fluke. This is the reason why Bazz-B ends up serving under Yhwach, the man who he had sworn to kill. This moment devastated him so badly that he threw away his previous convictions and had ended up joining Haschwalth in serving Yhwach, just so that he could prove to both Haschwalth and himself that he too was worthy of being recognized in such a way that it would validate all of his egotistical boasting that he had when he was a child, before learning that Haschwalth was the reason for his abilities and his talents. In summary, Bazz-B wanted a way out of Fraud Academy, and the only way that he had known how was to show up Haschwalth, and to prove that he was in fact a one-of-a-kind talented Quincy. This desire had completely overtaken his previous ones, and it had made him forget what kind of a monster Yhwach was, and why he had initially had that desire to kill him. He had spent so many years clawing and fighting his way up into Yhwach's elite fighting force, the Sternritter. This is why Bazz-B has such an intense emotional reaction after Yhwach had used Ashvalin on him. I think in this moment, when he is hit by the light of Ashvalin, he must have been reminded of everything that Yhwach had done to him when he was a child, all of the things that he had robbed from him. It was because of him taking in Haschwalth that Bazz-B's entire life was turned upside down. Yhwach was in fact the reason why Bazz-B had this intense desire to overtake Haschwalth and to prove that he was worthy. He set aside his desire to kill Yhwach and instead focused all of his efforts on Haschwalth, and in the end he ended up being betrayed by his leader. This is the real tragedy of Bazz-B's character. All he ever wanted was to feel like he was worth something again. That spark that he had lost as a child was all that he had wanted to find, and if Haschwalth being picked over him was what had made him feel this way in the first place, then surely defeating Haschwalth would have erased that feeling of inferiority. He spent a large portion of his life chasing after this desire, and in the end it amounts to nothing. It leads to absolutely nowhere, as he fails fantastically. He is casually defeated by Haschwalth and is left on the verge of death, but in his final moments he seems to realize that maybe being inferior to Haschwalth wasn't so bad after all. The tragedy of this realization is that it comes a second too late. After finally having his inferiority pushed right into his face, he realizes that being defeated by Haschwalth wasn't as painful as he thought that it was going to be. Following this, he ends up dying. Bazz-B lived for that one opportunity where he could prove himself, where he could show that he wasn't nothing. When Haschwalth had finally accepted his challenge, he failed to prove that he was stronger than him. In his final moments, he accepts his own mediocrity. He wasn't a special, very talented Quincy that was set apart from the rest, and he wasn't this genius that he had built himself up to be. Via his final moments, Kubo reveals to us that his obsession with wanting to prove himself was inherently a pointless one. Haschwalth, who had trained with him for 5 years, wanted Bazz-B to feel happy for him after he was chosen by Yhwach. If Bazz-B would have just allowed Haschwalth to take his place, then he would still be alive to this day. And maybe Haschwalth and Bazz-B could have teamed up and fought against Yhwach in the end, and the relationship between the two of them wouldn't have soured as much as it did. Bazz-B literally dies seconds after finding the path to enlightenment, and this is what makes his final moments truly tragic. His story ends in a very similar way to Kaname Tozan's. He never had the ability to redeem himself or to put into practice the things that he had learned from his realizations. Bazz-B swallowing his pride and deciding to serve under Yhwach was a constant daily reminder of why he would never be good enough, why he was overlooked by the leader of all of the Quincy, and instead the friend who he had kept around as a pitiful comparison to how stronger he is getting ended up being chosen over him. Him serving Yhwach under these conditions would have undoubtedly had several different effects on him psychologically, and this is why in the end I did hope that Bazz-B would have had somewhat of a happy ending, but we know how stories like these turn out for villains within Bleach. Bazz-B's character serves as an important reminder for us as to what happens to those who are unable to overcome their past and to find peace within themselves. I guess it just hurts in the end realizing that Bazz-B was also amongst those who was never truly able to find lasting peace in his life. So we've reached the point of the video where I want to hand over the discussion to all of you. What did you think about the character of Bazz-B? Did you learn new details about his friendship with Haschwalth or his hatred for Yhwach? I really look forward to reading all of your thoughts on one of the better written Sternritter who actually was given a backstory and had plentiful appearances within the manga. I have no doubt that Bazz-B's role will be further expanded upon during Core 3 and Core 4 of the all-new 1000 Year Blood War arc anime, so I look forward to seeing more of his backstory or an even more impactful final battle against Haschwalth within the anime. As always, continue the discussions about this character in the comments comments, and lastly, thank you for making it to the end of this video, and I cannot wait to see you in my next Bleach video. If you enjoy my content, then you can support my channel through Patreon for as little as $1 a month, or even through YouTube by becoming a channel member. You will gain access to exclusive channel perks and a Discord server which I frequently use. So become a member of my Zero Division and be the first to know about my upcoming videos. And once again, thank you for sticking around till the end of the video, and whatever you contribute will mean a lot to me.